I guess he has just become a ticking time bomb. The guy has seemingly forgotten how to pace himself at the start of a race.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the 6th episode of the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today I'm joined by Twan.
Hello.
And Issam.
Hey everybody.
Today we will be discussing the Superprestige race in Ruddervoorde that took place yesterday, and actually 2 days ago if you're listening to this on Monday. And wow, what a race we've seen, especially the women's race. But first let's talk about the men's race. Issam, give us a summary because it was quite an interesting race for the most of the time.
Yeah, it was indeed a very interesting race. It was a clean start for once. We had a front group with, it was around 7-10 guys who were in front. Main guys that were in front at the beginning were Van Kessel, Hermans, Iserbiet, Aerts. They showed their nose at front, but they were not able to create a gap. Midway through the race, it was in the end Van Torenhout who tried to pull in front for his leader, I guess, Iserbiet, and Aerts, Van der Haar, and Sweek for a little while, and then he had to crack as well. Were able to follow, and in the end, it was just a little bit of tactic games, and maybe Iserbiet was just the strongest, and Toon Aerts used a little bit too much, and Iserbiet was just able to get away and got the victory in front of Toon Aerts and Lars van der Haar, who was able to get the third place.
So Iserbiet takes the win after, it's the second win of the season after 3 podium places in between. Do we think he's turned things around and is better than Toon Aerts now? Or do we think that Toon Aerts was maybe right, as he said in his interview himself, that he maybe did too much work in the beginning of the race?
He did a ton of work because Paul Sousa, the guys with Van Torenhout and Iserbiet and also Sweek in the beginning, they really had a good tactic going on. The one is going to attack, the other one is sitting in the wheel of Aerts, and they just say, okay, you have to solve the problem. And he solves it then, time after time again. And, there was a lot of wind, so it was really a tactical race, and Paul Sousa showed that they were, if it's a tactical race, they were the best.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to see. First, the wind definitely helped there, making it a more interesting course, and Paul Sousa showing that they do have the numbers at some moments there, and a really important one at that point. But I think Van der Haar also could have done a little more for Toon Aerts there. Didn't really see him go with any of the moves.
No, indeed, he looked to be more on the defense than on the attack. But in the end, he is on the podium, and Paul Sousa is only with 1 on the podium. But they're on the place that matters the most. But you already mentioned it, that the weather, the wind, made it a tactical race. The parcours was faster than the couple of weeks we've seen before. Do you guys think that this played a big factor into how the race was played?
Definitely, because I think that Aerts tried it in the beginning of the race, saw that it didn't work out, and then you have this packed racing with so many guys that we normally wouldn't see in front. I mean, we have seen Tom Meulse even in the first group. So it's really, the wind played a factor. I think also because it's kind of a flat race. It's very open, so the wind plays a big role. And it wasn't the hardest race. It was kind of technical on some parts with the sand, but in the end, there were not so many parts where you could actually make someone suffer a lot.
Yeah, I think Toon Aerts in the first lap, got a really clean gap. You really saw that this wind made it a lot harder to stay away.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the hardest course, but it is a nice course. But even the rain doesn't do that much on that parcours. I don't exactly know why, because there had been quite a lot of rain in Ruddervoorde the week before. So I thought it would be a bit muddier, but in the end it was pretty fast. A big contrast to what we saw the weeks before. And the weeks before it was Toon Aerts who opened that big gap quite early on in the race, or at least before the halfway point. Do we think that he might have been a bit too much confident now, that he thought, okay, I've seen the last couple of weeks I'm this strong, I should really try and open the race early, whereas the last couple of weeks he looked to be a bit more cautious in how he was racing?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he questioned him actually himself in the interview and asked himself like, was I too much in front? Maybe. But the confidence, of course, when you win 3 in a row, you will be bulking out of confidence. So Arts was definitely thinking that he was untouchable, especially on an easier parkour. But I think now this is a good lesson for him, and he needs to go back to the drawing board and needs to think about a new tactic, a new way to get ahead of these Paul Sousen guys.
Yeah, I think it's a coming together of a whole bunch of circumstances as well. It being an easier parcours relatively to the likes of Beringen, and of course the win, the teammates of Iserbeat helping him drain Toon Aerts a little bit. And I don't necessarily think he needs to get a new tactic. I think he just needs to reevaluate where he is compared to Iserbeat. And just like, confidence is good, but once you get too confident, you might think that the margins are bigger than they are, when in reality, we see these guys just right around, and I mean, they lose like 1 or 2 seconds a lap, and those margins aren't that big.
But then, Twan, do you think that Aerts was better than Iserbeat and just wasn't smarter, or do you think that Iserbeat maybe made this step because we are going towards the first big race of the season? I mean, this was an important race, but the European Championships, 2 weeks. Do you think that Iserbeat is maybe peaking, or do you think that, like I said earlier, that Aerts was stronger but not smart enough?
I think it could be a combination of both. Of course, Iserbeat said that he would be working towards the November and December month, so that he might have just slightly increased that form. I thought that he had said that he did quite a tough week of training, maybe the week before Beringen, so maybe that paid off a little extra in this week. And then of course, Toon Aerts maybe not racing the smartest race made that difference.
So let's take a look at the top 10 then. It was Iserbeat in the end who won, in front of Aerts and Van der Haar, what we basically just discussed. In 4th place it was Michael van Toornhout, Laurens Week in 5th, Daan Soete ended 6th, Philippe Orts, Corné van Kessel, Quinten Hermans and Toon van der Bos ended 11th. Tom Meeuwse rounds out the top 10. Some interesting new names that we see in here. Daan Soete finishing in 6th. I personally think that this is a parcours that suits him. He's more this guy that likes the fast parcourses, and also a guy who likes to take risks like we saw in Beringen. Do you guys think this as well?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Soete. I think we saw that actually last year and the year before more. That especially when we had those cyclocross opening season with a lot of fast races, that the likes of Daan Soete and also Quinten Hermans, are more at front than in a regular cross race. And it's just good to see those names popping up in the top 10, to be honest.
It's certainly nice to see Daan Soete in there, back-to-back weeks. Hopefully he can continue this vein of form. And indeed, he seems to be better suited to the easier parcourses.
Also, another name in the top 10 that stands out is Philippe Orts, the number 2 of the World Championships under 23 that were held in BLS in 2017. What do you guys think of his performance?
Beautiful.
I just love to see it. A Spanish rider in the cyclocross top 10 in a Belgian race.
Yeah, nothing to add. It's just amazing that we have a different flag from the Dutch and the and the Belgium flags in the top 10. And for him especially, I think he likes this kind of races as well. And it's just good for the internationalization of cyclocross in general that we have these riders in the top 10.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's only the second time this season that there is a non-Dutch as Belgian guy in the top 10. The other one being Thomas Main in Beringen last week. So it's indeed a good sign. We also saw Corné van Kessel and Quinten Hermans from Tormans ending in the top 10. But both of them fell back quite a bit after them being quite at the front for quite a long part of the first half of the race. But then they fell back, and the same can be said for Kevin Kuhn and Ryan Kamp. Twan, if you see this, Quinten Hermans blowing up again, what can you say about it?
I guess he has just become a ticking time bomb. The guy has seemingly forgotten how to pace himself at the start of a race, and that is really unfortunate to see, because it is definitely costing him placings in the end of result.
For Hermans, indeed, it's been week after week now, but for someone like Corné van Kessel and Ryan Kamp, more of a surprise in my opinion, because Van Kessel always is this consistent rider who never looks to make these mistakes, and Kamp and Kuhn, or more Kamp actually, Kamp has been at the front of the races, like top 5, top 8 quite often. This time, however, he finished in 16th. Could there be something off, or would it not have been a park course for him?
I think youth comes into play as well here. The guy is just 20 years of age, so there will be some days where not everything clicks and he'll be back around 16th place again.
Yeah, I think as well for Van Kessel, I'm not really sure, but he did do quite late in the road season some races. It might be that as well, plays a role in his shape at this moment. And like you said, I think Van Kessel is a smart rider. He's a rider with a lot of experience at this point. So it's a little bit weird for me to see him make that. I wouldn't even say mistake. It's just the body that gives up at that point. And for Hermans, Hermans, it's not the first time. So I really hope that he's going to understand one way or the other that there is no point in going so fast at the beginning of a race. Like, at this point, you should realize it, right? I mean, I hope he gets above it and he gets back to the old shape of a top 5.
I hope so as well for him. And I think that Ryan Kamp definitely shouldn't be worried going towards the European Championships in 2 weeks. And also a nice thing for him, next weekend on the Koppenberg, if I'm not mistaken, the under 23s will have their own race there, and that's something that is really nice to see. Another thing that was super nice to watch was the women's race. We had a stunner of a battle there. Twan, tell us more about it.
From the first lap, we saw a split. I think at the start it was Alvarado that got away, but an unfortunate mistake put her back into the group. Then someone came over and it just kept going like this all race. Eventually we ended up for the majority of the race with a group of 5. Celine Del Carmen Alvarado, Annemarie Worst, Lucinda Brandt, Yara Kastelein and Manon Bakker. Going into lap 5 is when it really kicked off again. It was Manon Bakker who attacked on the road, and Laura Verdonschot was able to use a moment of hesitation to briefly get back into the group, but then Alvarado tried to use Manon Bakker as a launching pad basically, and she went after her, but it all came back together, and the 5 women went into the final lap together. And for the final lap, it was mostly Manon Bakker who was kind of struggling off the back, and you could really see that she was out of contention. And Yara Kastelein seemed to struggle a little more as well. Lucinda Brandt looking to keep up with the rivalry that seems to be going on between Alvarado and Worst, and she wasn't quite able to. Alvarado dive bombing her way through that corner, taking Worst with her as well, and then just placing a brilliant attack, finally able to put a lap together, and that was the win for Celine Del Carmen Alvarado ahead of Worst and Lucinda Brandt.
Yeah, really, what a race that was. It was an absolute pleasure to be able to watch that, and we saw it again, the rivalry between Alvarado and Worst. Issam, I know you have some hot takes on this. Tell us.
Yeah, it's just so amazing to see that we have this rivalry going on in the women's cycling. They are just, to be honest, in my opinion, they are just so much better than the rest. And it's like you can just see it on their faces. I mean, Alvarado in the end also saying that she didn't want to make herself tired, that she was trying to conserve the energy and not go all out in the first round. It's just, also you just see it in the way they're riding. They're looking at each other. The one has a gap, she looks behind, she sees the other is coming. They are constantly just looking at each other, and it just is a rivalry. We're going to see it many more races for sure, and it's just good to have in the cyclocross for the women.
Alvarado said after the race in her interview that she wasn't really happy about how the race went. It was a big group of 5, sometimes even 6 for quite a long time, and she blamed this on, for sure, Worst, and I don't know if she said Kastelein or Brandt. Either of the two, she said. I think it's probably Brandt. She said, yeah, they didn't want to work. Apparently they didn't want to get clear of the rest, so then I won't be doing anything either. And in the end I win. It was something like that. She wasn't happy at all. Do you understand that, or do you maybe think she's overreacting?
I mean, for sure, there is some sort of overreaction in what she said. But she's the world champion, and she has this status now of being dominant. Not in the sense that she is actually dominant, because I think that Worst and Brandt are not like that worse than she is. But to be honest, it is. I wouldn't complain about this. This is just so good for cyclocross to have these debates going after the race, and I just wish that it continues in a friendly manner, though.
I mean, I'm all for people saying that others don't want to work and then just not working themselves. If it gives me this much fun watching a cross, please do it every week. I'm perfectly fine watching this. It was fun to see a group of 5 riders basically being together and wondering when that one attack was going to stick.
Well, that one attack came in the last lap of the race by Alvarado, and wow, what an attack that was. You already said it. She dive bombed Brandt, and then she, through that sand pit, she got out all the power that was in it. It was super impressive to watch that as well, and especially when she got off her bike and started running. I mean, wow, what a sprint that was.
Yeah, definitely that part on the sand where she just sprinted away from Worst, and in the end had the gap and just maintained the gap till the finish. She is really, in everything what she does, she is really a stylistic rider. She has this momentum at this point, but we don't have to forget, Worst is coming. They come from an injury. She's building up. She's coming closer and closer and closer. She should worry about Worst at this point, really.
Indeed, they look to be very equal. And we should take a look at the rest of the top 10. So Alvarado versus Brandt was the podium. Kastelein finishes 4th despite her lack of technique. That really cost her again today, a few mistakes. Manon Bakker in 5th. She's the big favorite now for the under-23 championships in Den Bosch, or Rosmalen. Verdonschot finishes in 6th. Betsema finishes in 7th. Rochette in 8th. Van der Heijden in 9th. And Lechner in 10th. Let's talk about Denise Betsema.
Crashing in like the first corner of the race, wasn't it?
Yep. And alone. There was, at least that from the point of view I saw it from, it was alone. She was on the inside of the corner and she just crashed on the grass.
Yeah, she was alone. She
looked very awkward.
It looked to be like a front lockup, in my opinion. Too much front brake, not enough grip, and then you go down. But still impressive to ride back all the way from the back of the field. Don't forget, 93 participants. 93 participants. She was 93rd after the first or second corner. Finishes 7th. That must have been a stunner of a race. Too bad that we didn't have onboard cameras like we do in F1, because otherwise I'm sure there would have been some nice overtakes in there.
Definitely.
It's an impressive ride, only losing 45 seconds, which I would assume she lost like 20 of those in the first lap, and it would have just accumulated as she had to pass people. If she doesn't crash there, get through that first corner well, she would have been in there and would have been a group of 6.
And her knee didn't look good either. There was kind of some blood coming out and stuff. It didn't look. I don't know. It's impressive from her to crash and then come back like that. That is really, really impressive performance.
Yeah, and in Beringen she showed just how strong she is. For me, she's my favorite to win the Koppenberg this week, but that will be for a preview episode on that. If we look in the rest of the 10, we also see Rochette and Lechner, some more international faces. Rochette finishing in 8th, pretty good performance for her. Lechner a bit worse than last week, but also parkours that is less good for her, but still nice to see them in the top 10 in my opinion.
Definitely. I mean, we knew a little bit that Rochette and has it in her to be able to make such a performance, and for Lechner as well. But it's just good that they confirmed their performances by getting in the top 10 in such a race, and let's just hope. I mean, there are still, like, we have Anna Kay as well, who was just outside of the top 10, I think in 14th. But there are some girls that are actually not Dutch or Belgium and are able to get in the top 10 for sure, and just going to be good for the cyclocross as well.
I think with the women's you can even count the Belgians as hope that they make it. Like it's sometimes women's cyclocross feels like an open Dutch championships. Basically.
Yeah, true. There's only 3 non-Dutch in the top 10. And then if you look outside of the top 10, Van Anrooy, Van Alphen and Pietersen on 11, 12, 13. Pietersen riding her first cyclocross race of the season, coming back from the European Championships mountain bike juniors, where she got a bronze medal. Impressive stuff by her as well. And the Dutch coach, national coach, is going to have some serious trouble in making his selection. Because now he's still lucky that he can put Bakker and Pietersen and Van Anrooy, Van Alphen in the under 23 category. So that means, and same goes for Van der Heijden. So probably he will still call up Sophie de Boer, who finished his 18th here for the men's for the elite race. But once these riders come through from the under 23 to the elite, it's going to be a real struggle. Basically, the national coach can come into a situation where he's already going to deny people a chance of having a shot at the world title because he doesn't select them.
Yeah, we're gonna have this situation what the elite Belgium actually have and had before, where they actually just had like around 10, 15 guys that had a potential in them to be on a world championship, but are just not able to be there because you have a limit of 7, 8. Guys, so Gerben de Knecht has a tough job, and I wish him all the luck in the future, because that's going to be only harder and harder, I guess.
And we already mentioned it, or basically with the point about Belgium, Sanne Kant and Ribeiro, another disappointing race for them. I mean, already talked about it, and I don't want to go into it too deep, but the only question I have is, could it have been that for Kant and Ribeiro, that their preparation for this season wasn't ideal because of COVID, and that they either didn't have the right mindset to be able to train during lockdown, or that they just didn't have the potential to even train during lockdown like Alvarado and Vorst did?
I think for Norbert Ribeiro this might be an issue. A lack of good preparation, because of course you don't just become the U23 world champion. There's definitely potential there, and hopefully it will develop over the years. But I think for Sanne Kant it might be a preparation issue. But I think she had this last year a little as well, and back then we didn't have any sort of lockdown or COVID going on. So I think for Sanne Kant it will be a lot tougher to get back to any sort of level that is good enough for a top 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say at this point. It's still a little bit early in the season, and I hope she turns it around and comes back in better form and in better with better results. But at this moment, it doesn't look good. Huh? She was 14th, I think, in Beringen, and in Gieten she was 10th. So it's actually, she's only going down in her results. So hopefully somewhere she can pick it up again. And get herself back in positions she's used to, I guess.
Then another thing, Lotte Kopecky, the road rider from Lotto Soudal women's team, the third in Tour of Flanders, rode here as well, finished 38th. I mean, you can't expect a lot more from her. At least we don't. The Belgian commentators thought differently. In the preview they said that if Lotte Kopecky had a good start, they thought that she could potentially be in the mix for a top 10.
Ooh.
That's very nationalistic.
That's chauvinism is a French word, but I think today it's a Belgian word because I'm afraid that's a little bit too high for her, especially. Did she do it in the youth categories or not?
I think this was her very first cross.
Then you cannot expect anything, to be honest. It was the same when who was it again? Van Vleuten did her first race as well. You know.
Yeah,
you cannot
indeed,
expect that much.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Dutch people were saying like, yeah, maybe she can do something, but I mean, if you ride the sandpit with your hands in the drops, I mean, it just shows that you don't really know what you are doing.
Yeah, it's way different as well. The road and cyclocross. I think it's easier for a cyclocross rider to go on the road than for a road cyclist to go in the cyclocross, I think.
Definitely. I think they should just be proud that she only finished 6.5 minutes down. I think that's quite the achievement.
Indeed, and she hadn't ridden any UCI race before, like Twan said. It was her very first cyclocross race. So, yeah, I mean, it also shows that the idea that the UCI had of giving wildcards on the first 2 rows of the grid that could be awarded to road riders that wanted to do cyclocross like Alaphilippe and Sagan is a pretty stupid idea. Because
if they would put them,
it really requires preparation. You can't just come to cyclocross and say, okay guys, I'm a good road rider, today I'm becoming a good cyclocross rider. It really requires preparation.
Yeah,
I think if they would give those wildcards to maybe like the 4th or 5th row, that would be a nice place, and then you should like go from there and evaluate from week to week where such a person can go. But clearly, like for Lotte Kopecky, there would be no benefit to anyone putting her on the first row, because it might have made like a difference for like 5 places for her, but you don't want her to give a first row start to someone who is going to finish below 30th or even 20th.
Yeah, indeed. And however, what I said about the Belgian broadcast, I mean, that was just the presentation. I don't want to do anything off the broadcast because Video House, they really provided a good broadcast with some stunning shots, good graphics, and I mean, really props to them. They really did a good job, in my opinion, in broadcasting this race. Then the women's race, there was also a special prize awarded to the top 3 of the juniors. That race there, which was won by Schreiber, the Luxembourgish girl, in front of Bakstedt, who is from England, and the Dutch girl Leonie Bentveld. There was also a men's junior race, which was a Belgian podium. Jente Michels won in front of Aaron Dox and Jelle Hartil. Nothing much we can really say about that, is there?
No Dutch people.
Yeah, that's the only thing I guess what we can say about it. And yeah, other than that, congratulations to the riders.
Of course.
Indeed, and we will keep an eye on them and see how they can develop, not only this season, but also in the future seasons. I think that rounds it off then for this episode of the Cyclocross Social podcast. The Superprestige Ruddervoorde is what we discussed today. I would like to thank Issam.
Yeah, thank you.
And also thank Twan.
Thank you as well for hosting.
And if you guys have any last words, you can give them now.
Looking forward to Koppenberg.
Yes, definitely.
Indeed,
yes,
the Koppenberg is the next thing. We will be taking a look ahead at the Koppenberg in a preview episode, which will be uploaded later this week. And next week we'll be, of course, back when we will be discussing the Koppenberg Cross. Goodbye.